What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training. And today we're going to be breaking down how to snap down perfectly. So we're going to be talking about the key specific things that are going to help you get in and out of breaks where you got to snap down, you got to use that trigger step, you got to be violent with your hips to be able to decelerate. So I hope this video gives you guys some value and teaches you the correct way to be able to get in and out of breaks, okay? But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you want over an hour and a half's worth of specific content to take your route running and press releases to that next level, check out that very first link in the description for our route running Bible. What you'll get access to is a 48-minute long video where we give you a 10-day step-by-step process on how to improve your route running with specific techniques, drills, and full routes that we give you, and a 49-minute long video on 20 different press releases, when to use those releases, so that helps with the football IQ, and then specific drills with sets and reps to work those. So check out that very first link in the description, fellas. I think that can give you a lot of value. Let's get started. So first route we're looking at here, I'm not really going to focus on too much of the route because this is probably just some kind of play concept that they work. It's almost like that situation where you're running an out and it's like off man, and if this guy's outside shade, you break it and then you slip back to the inside. If he's inside shade, you just break it off to the out. That's what it looks like, but we're just going to be talking about that snap down at the top of this break, okay? So now, when I drop into a break, the whole point of snapping down that a lot of people don't understand is it's to be able to decelerate when selling vertical or when selling an actual part of the route, right? If we didn't have to sell vertical and we didn't have to, like actually run fast to get a DB to commit his hips and turn, I could just beat the drum and get out of this thing nice and slow, or just go one step because I'm going half speed. But the thing about route running is we got to be selling every single break that we do, whether it's I'm going vertical and coming back to the ball on a curl, or whether I'm breaking to the out and then slipping back to the inside, almost like a whip route, right? So when I come off here, the thing that's got to remain consistent no matter what is it's got to be your hips have to be violent. Like, you got to be as aggressive as possible when you slow down, because when you're running full speed, you got to have this explosion and this drop of your hips, and you got to bring your chin to your knee to be able to decelerate, but not only decelerate, create energy, because that violence that you have at the top of the break creates energy. I remember somebody in the past has said, oh, well, you're talking about creating energy. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, when I say creating energy, I'm talking about acceleration. When you're violent at the top of that break, you don't want to just go dead. You don't want to just stop and decelerate and then have to start again. You want to be violent with your hips so you can create energy to accelerate back and win the race to the ball. It's like a 40-yard dash. You don't just stand straight up at a 40-yard dash and just start running. You create energy for the first 10 yards by being powerful and explosive, and that's what you're trying to do at the top of the break. So that's what you need to do here. You're violent with your hips. You bring your chin down so you're in an explosive spot so you could actually shoot back to the ball. So that's number one. So this outside leg is that trigger step. That's the violent step, right? Now, some routes you do it on the inside leg. Me personally, anytime I'm running a curl route, I teach the outside leg. Anytime we're running a comeback route, I teach the inside leg. A dig route, you could do either or. In a situation like this, I would teach the outside leg, and then like a hitch route, I would teach the inside, right? So it kind of depends, right? It kind of depends on the break, right? So when he snaps down here, the whole goal now is to get his hips turned back on that angle. So when you guys are violent with that step, your second step has to pivot, right? So it's got to be a snap and then a pivot step. And that pivot step is what's going to get your hips turned so you could actually explode with the third step and create energy, okay? So when I pivot off of this step, I got to hook this third step back around, because now, since I'm in that explosive position, I'm in a spot where I could explode back to the ball. I'm driving off of this third step. This third step's really going to push so I could actually explode out of there, right? So the thing about, and we're going to be talking about the hands and like all the technique with the upper half in a second here with these next two clips that we're going to look at, but as long as you get the lower half down, the hands become a lot easier. So that snap, pivot, then hook step is what's going to get your hips turned, keeps you in an explosive position so you can actually push, because the goal is to win the race to here. The goal is who's going to get to this spot faster where the ball is thrown. Is it going to be the DB or is it going to be you? And it should be us every single time, because I've sold the route. I had a violent change of direction with no indicators. That violent snap down that everybody loves to talk about, that trigger step, is so you don't give any indicators to this DB so you could actually accelerate, burst, and get back to this ball. Let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Judy being violent with his hips, dropping down and accelerating back to the ball and creating energy off the break. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at Antonio Brown. So probably one of the best route runners to ever do it, right? Regardless of your opinion on the guy, you got to respect the game. So let's watch the thing full speed first time, and then we'll get into this break. So when he snaps down, he takes a little bit more steps than Judy did, but it's a comeback, right? So I think the example, like I'm sure you guys all saw that clip of Terrell Owens running routes at that camp, that college camp. And I think the one thing that, like, obviously Terrell Owens, like, he's older, right? And he's going up against high school guys that are trying to be in college, but you still see the amount of separation he's able to get, and you're still able to see just how much like of a next level he's at. And what you really notice when he runs that comeback, when he drops into routes, is how sudden that hip drop is, and there's no indicator. So that's the next thing that I want to get across to you guys, is there can't be an indicator on this. So you see when Antonio Brown's running, he's not really concerned about steps. It's just more so how sudden can I be with my hips, right? So many guys get so concerned with steps at the top of the route. And I know that kind of sounds funny because that's what we were just talking about. We were talking about the 3 steps that you need to take, but at the end of the day, it's about eliminating time. At this point right here, if you guys can drop your hips and actually do it while selling vertical and then eliminate the amount of time that you spend at the top of the break, you're going to get separation. It's not about steps. If I could take 5 steps and I'm selling vertical as long as possible, I'm violent with my hips, and my 5 steps are faster than a guy who slows way down, takes 3 steps, but there's no explosion and no burst, I'm going to get open and he's not, because when he slows down, the DB slows down. So we got to make sure that your hips being violent is the key. And so that outside leg on a comeback. So I teach the opposite right here. But again, you don't want to get too caught up in what step is it, because sometimes, especially when you're going up against like a press guy, you don't necessarily have like you get to a certain yardage, you get to a certain depth, and you got to drop, and maybe you're not on the inside foot. You just got to drop your hips. So you don't want to get too caught up in what foot it is. Against zone coverage off man, it's a little bit easier when you got to snap down to go off the correct, like not the correct step, but the step that you want to go off of. But you got to be comfortable doing both. You got to be more so comfortable with dropping your hips rather than, okay, I must break on this step, so I'm going to take a bunch of choppy steps right before the break point because I'm not on that step. You got to get comfortable with just dropping your hips. So that's exactly what Brown does right here, right? So he snaps on this, and you see his hips are violent. He's getting his chin to his knee or thereabouts the best he can and getting to that explosive position, because now it's a race back to this spot. So who's going to get there? And the low man should win if I do everything correctly. So you see he gets low, he's violent with his hips, and now let's talk about the steps. So snap, hook, pivot, hook around. And this is the step that he's got to drive off of, right? He's not turning out of it. He's got his chest forward. He's in an explosive position. He's driving out of it. He's pushing out of it so he can actually accelerate. Now, let's talk about his arms here. You see when he drops, his arms keep moving and his arms keep running. This is something that I don't teach this. What I say is you want to keep your arms natural. And that's what we're going to be looking at. We got a clip of Tyreek Hill doing this exact same route next that we're going to take a look at. Well, not the exact same route, but we're going to be taking a look at Tyreek Hill snapping down next. And I say keep your arms natural. So like you saw when Judy did it, his arms kind of shot down, right? His arms went dead. But you don't want your arms to be completely dead because that's going to stop your feet. And you don't want your feet to go dead because then you don't have any explosion out of there. Now, you see Antonio Brown, he's a little bit closer to almost like that beating the drum concept, right? So he's snapping down here, and he's almost just beating the drum. But I think the main thing that you want to do with these arms is you want to keep them natural, like I said, because you don't want to shoot them down, and you don't want to foot fire with them and have my hands go super fast, because that makes your feet go super fast and you chop and you waste time at the top of the break. You just want to keep them natural. You just want to run your hands as if you're running a 40, because if you could get low and get in that explosive position and your feet keep moving and your arms keep moving, you could really accelerate after you've created that energy. You don't want to have this slow, low explosive drop and then keep your hands running. You actually want to be violent, have that snap with your hips, but also at the same time keep your arms natural so you can turn that arm drive into some acceleration and win that race back to the ball and beat the DB there. So that's a great example of snapping down on a comeback from Antonio Brown. Not necessarily worried about steps, more so just breaking this thing off and getting out of the break as fast as possible in the least amount of time spent at the top of the break while selling vertical rather than worrying about steps. So now let's take a look at this clip here from Tyreek Hill. So this is kind of a mix of both, right? He keeps his hands somewhat active, but he doesn't, and somewhat like he shoots them down like Jerry Jeudy does at the top of the route. This is what I feel is the perfect one, and we're going to talk about the steps at the top of the break as well. So you see how Hill's running, gets this guy to turn vertical, and he drops those hips. But you see how his arms somewhat stay active, they stay natural. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't stop moving them. He's still pumping those arms, but it's not like he's beating the drum, right? It's not like he's playing the drums or milking the cow, as I like to call it, but it's not like he shot him way down towards the ground and shot him down towards his ankles, right? Because I think when you shoot him down like that and you have to accelerate, that's when it can be an issue, right? But when you shoot them down and you have to just stop, then for sure, yeah, that could help. Like if you're running a stop route, yeah, you want to shoot your hands down maybe because that'll just help. If that helps you stop and that helps your feet go dead, so be it. But I think the arms really help you accelerating out of the break, right? So when I'm here, Tyreek Hill does such a great job, again, snapping on the outside leg, pivoting off the second step, third step, 4, 5. He takes 5 steps, but because he got this DB to commit to the vertical and actually turn his hips because he has great speed, because he's got great body language, and because his eyes are straight forward, those 5 steps he take doesn't really matter. It matters that he dropped explosively, took a quick 5 steps, and actually accelerated out because his hands were running him out of there, and he was in that explosive position to drive him out of there. So that's the main keys, fellas. If you guys can understand those concepts, that it's really all about the stem, the break point, and the acceleration. 3 phases of every route. I got to have a good stem to get this DB to do exactly that. I got to have a good break point, which means that I got to be violent, because when I'm violent, I create that explosion, but also I'm able to decelerate and then turn that deceleration and that explosion that I created into that third phase, which is an acceleration point where I run back and I win the race to the ball. Because ultimately, if I could get to here before he gets there, in the simplest terms, I'm going to win the route. Okay, so that's a perfect example of what to do, all 3 phases of the route. Let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time from Hill. Great job here pushing vertical, getting the DB to turn his hips. Obviously, his speed helps, but being violent at the top of the break and accelerating out is something all receivers can do. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So I always appreciate the feedback. And also, fellas, if you want our Route Running Bible, over an hour and a half's worth of exclusive premium content you can't find on any of our social media platforms, check out that very first link in the description, fellas. I'll see you guys next time.